Hey guys, what's good? Welcome back to JDB Selects. We've made it. The finals are here. It's a bit sad that there are only 4 games this week, but I can guarantee that those 4 games will have more action than the past month of footy combined. Some good matchups, some do-or-die games. This is what we've been building towards for the past 4 or 5 months. I cannot wait. But before we do get stuck into my breakdown and tips for the finals week 1, let's, as always, look back at how we did last week. So last week we tipped 5 out of 8 games, a bit of a disappointing end to the season in the last couple of weeks, but overall not too bad of a season all up. The baby Broncos couldn't get it done against the Storm, the Rabbitohs couldn't fix their woes within a week, and then obviously the Knights thumped the Dragons, and Knights fans have been giving it to me in the comments for weeks now, and I'm more than happy to take my licks. Full credit to the Knights, they are the dark horse in the top 8 as of right now. And because we are now finally through the regular season, that means we can crown the winner of the inaugural JDB Selects tipping comp. So big congratulations to Abdullah the Butcherer for taking out the competition's first ever year. 2 points clear of Jared's 68 at the end of the year. I know those two have been battling it out all season for months and months, so it was great to watch. Congrats to everyone in the top 20. I'm sorry I can't include everyone's names, but we had almost, I think, close to 500 people join, which was just incredible. So congrats to everyone on screen. Thank you to everyone that was in the comp, getting involved in the message boards and all the rest. No doubt we'll go bigger and better next season, and I can guarantee we'll have some prizes on the line. But all of that doesn't matter anymore. We've made it to the finals. Let's get stuck in for my tips and breakdown of finals week 1. Alright, the finals get underway on Friday night with the second placed Brisbane Broncos playing host to the third placed Melbourne Storm at Suncorp Stadium for the second week in a row. And starting first with the Broncos, the baby Broncs couldn't lock up Brisbane's first minor premiership in 20 years, falling away against the Melbourne Storm 32 points to 22. The Broncos started fast and were keeping pace with the clock up 12-0 after 12 minutes before costly errors and fatigue allowed the Storm to take control. It obviously wasn't a true reflection of both sides given the players rested, and this week's game will no doubt look completely different, but the Broncos were broken down through the middle and struggled to contain the Storm around the ruck. Tristan Sailor was easily the Broncos' standout with over 200 running metres, 2 try assists, 8 tackle breaks and 3 line break assists, but he desperately needed others to give it a real crack with him. The Storm's hoodoo over the Broncos continues, at least for now, and the loss will no doubt give the Broncos even more motivation for this week's crucial clash. And looking at the teams list too, so Adam Reynolds and Pat Carrigan have both been named to make their return this week. They'll obviously be joined by Katoni Staggs, who returns from his 1-game suspension, while Jesse Arthurs shifts to the wing in place of Corey Oates. And then all of the players that were rested, like Walsh, Mam, Farnworth, Kate Wall, all the rest, Haas, are all back on deck this week. So the Brisbane Broncos are fielding a full-strength side as expected. And as for the Storm, well, you can probably, just take what I said about the Broncos and flip it. But the Storm obviously did extend their winning streak over the Broncos to 14 on the bounce with an impressive 32-22 point win. Melbourne started slow but eventually outpaced the Broncos with their forward pack taking control and allowing the likes of Pappenhausen, Fa'alongo and Anderson to run rings around their opposite numbers. I won't go over this game again too much because again, all the players that were out, but I think for me the biggest takeaway from that is relevant for this week's game is Pappenhausen is back. And man, he's getting better and better with every minute he plays, which makes the Storm an even more scarier prospect in the final season. The only other main takeaway from that game is how good of a coach Craig Bellamy is. I mean, he fielded a fairly inexperienced side, and despite the slow start, they stuck to their game plans and processes and played the exact same style of game plan their A-team would or should, which just really highlights the amazing job that Bellyache has done at that club over the last 20 years. And in terms of Melbourne's team list, Jerome Hughes has been named to play despite that knee injury. Harry Grant has also been named to play, while Melbourne will also be boosted by the returns of Meaney, Warbrick, Munster, Kamikamitha, Welch, etc. All the players they rested are back. The other key takeaway too is that Pappenhausen has been named on the bench, so he'll bring that X factor off the bench for Bellamy. Alright, looking at the two sides head to head, I mean it's fairly common knowledge at this point that the Broncos haven't beaten the Storm in 6 years, with Melbourne winning 4 straight and a mind-blowing 24 of their last 26 meetings. They also haven't lost to the Broncos at Suncorp since 2009. Man, I really cannot wait for this game. I think it's going to be an absolute cracker between 2 of the best sides in the competition. But I am going to take the home team here, the Broncos 1-12. I'm going to go against the stats because I genuinely do think that they can get it done. On paper, both sides have their strengths and weaknesses, and I think the Broncos forward pack will be able to win the contest through the middle and shut down the likes of Grant and Pappenhausen, and that'll no doubt be their focus. Brisbane's biggest enemy though is obviously themselves, and in high pressure games this season they have made it harder on themselves, or more often than not they found a way to win. They will need to be near perfect for 80 minutes to beat the Storm, but I really do think that they will be able to rewrite history on Friday night. Moving now to the first of two Saturday games, starting first with the first placed Penrith Panthers taking on my Wars, fourth placed Warriors at Bluebet Stadium in Sydney. Starting first with the Panthers, they secured their third minor premiership in 4 years with a dominant display against the North Queensland Cowboys, cruising home to a 44-12 point win. In a round where most teams rested their star players in anticipation for the finals, Ivan Cleary fielded a near full-strength side and clearly wanted his side to regain some much-needed confidence after their shock loss to the Parramatta Eels the week prior. The Panthers tore through the Cowboys, who missed a whopping 74 tackles, with Crichton, To'o, Edwards and Taruva almost toying with their opposition. Nathan Cleary controlled the game perfectly without Luai and played with clear aggression and intent, regularly taking the line on and running for almost 150 metres with 7 tackle breaks. It really was a vintage Panthers performance and will no doubt mean they enter into the finals with a renewed confidence and belief that they can become the first team since the 1980s to win 3 straight premierships. And in terms of ins and outs, Mitch Kenny and Scott Sorensen are back on deck this week. Luai remains sidelined and will probably be out for at least another week or 2. That does mean that Jack Cogger remains at number 6, and he was pretty good against the Cowboys, racking up 3 try assists and 3 line break assists. And as for the Wars, they had their 8-game streak ended by the Dolphins on Saturday afternoon, going down 34 points to 10. Just as I touched on in the Storm and Broncos game, it is hard to glean too much from those performances. Obviously with the key players out, Webster rested, Johnson, AFB, Toru Harris, Chance Klugstad, Dalen, Egan, you can't really take too much from it. But in saying that, it was obviously a disappointing performance nonetheless, with fatigue playing a massive part down the stretch, coupled with a lack of structure and direction. Following last week's season-ending injury to Luke Metcalf, all eyes were on Ronald Volkman and Timari Martin to stand up and make their case for the number 6 jersey. I thought Ronald Volkman, who was the New South Wales Cup's leading point scorer, played with confidence and looked dangerous, and he honestly reminded me quite a lot of Josh Schuster. And as for Timari Martin, he obviously hasn't played much football and seemed understandably off the pace and a bit disconnected at times, but should be better for the run. In my opinion, this game is the biggest game of the Warriors season, bar the grand final. If they can manage to get past the Panthers this week and bring that prelim final back to New Zealand, they are a genuine chance of making it into the GF. So for me, this is the biggest game of their season. And in terms of their teams list, obviously all the players they rested last week are back on action. The other notable inclusion is Jazz Tavanga returns after missing 3 games with a hamstring injury, and that's great for the Warriors. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Panthers have a great historical record over the Warriors. They've won 14 of their last 11 meetings, including 7 straight. Bluebet also hasn't been a happy hunting ground for the Warriors either, only walking away with the Chockies there once since 2013. They also met earlier this season back in Magic Round, with the Panthers edging out an 18-6 point win, but do keep in mind that the Warriors had 2 players in the sin bin during that game. Ooh, now this is very clearly a biased tip, and to be fair, I don't really care. The season's over, it means nothing, but I genuinely do think the Warriors can cause an upset here. They obviously gave the Panthers a really good run for their money earlier in the season, and like I just touched on too, they did have 2 players sent off in that game, and with Andrew Webster in charge, he knows the Panthers inside and out. If anyone can spring an upset, it's got to be Webby, and with all of the Warriors stars rested last week, they'll be charged up, ready to rock and roll, and it's going to happen. So Warriors 1-12. Moving now to the final game on Saturday, we have the 6th placed Cronulla Sharks taking on the 7th placed Sydney Roosters at PointsBet Stadium in Sydney. Starting first with the Sharks, Cronulla managed to fight off a game Raiders side to lock in a home final with a gutsy 24-6 point win to wrap up the regular season. That game had that real finals feel about it, with only 1 try apiece in the first half and scores still tight after 60 minutes before a red card to Seb Chris allowed the Sharks to pull away. Hines was once again outstanding with 4 try assists, 170 running meters and 3 line break assists. I thought the Sharks defended really well, only conceding the lone try, but they did fade late defensively against the Knights last week, so it's a real shame that that red card flipped the game on its head, because I would have loved to have seen the Sharks do it for 80 minutes. Nevertheless, though, those kind of gritty wins can do wonders for a side's confidence going into knockout must-win games. And as for the teams list, Craig Fitzgibbon has named the same 17 that took down the Raiders last week. And as for the Roosters, they fucking did it! The Roosters penned another chapter in the book of feuds and sent their arch rivals South Sydney packing with an impressive 26-12 point win to secure their own unlikely berth in the top 8. The Chooks have been building nicely over the past month, but the addition of Sam Walker has truly been remarkable. Walker's seemingly taken a lot of pressure off the likes of Tedesco and especially Carey and allowed them to play their natural games while adding some much needed direction to the rest of the side. It's pretty crazy to think that the Roosters were dead and buried only a few months ago and now, in my opinion, are genuine dark horses in the race for the premiership. And in terms of the Roosters side, so Joey Manu returns from his hamstring injury this week, but bear in mind he may be a late scratching, just depends on how his injury pulls up. And then winger Daniel Tupou is out with a knee injury he suffered in training, so that means that Junior Polga will play his first ever finals match. Looking at the two sides head to head, the stats they do favour the Roosters. They have won 7 of the last 8 meetings, with the Sharks snapping a 7-game losing streak earlier this season, 22 points to 12, that was back in round 7. The Roosters have also won 4 of their last 5 games at PointsBet. Ooh, this should be another good game. I mean, let's be honest here, they're all going to be great games, but I'm going to take the Roosters here 1-12. I think the Roosters have a lot of momentum on their side, their confidence is up, their attack's looking good. The only thing that could really hurt them is their handling and their own errors, but something just tells me the Roosters are going to get it done. So I'm going to do it. Roosters 1-12. And the final game of Finals Week 1 has the 5th placed Newcastle Knights taking on the 8th placed Canberra Raiders at McDonald Jones Stadium in Newey. Starting first with Newcastle, the Knights made it 9 straight with a clinical destruction of the St. George Illawarra Dragons, 32 points to 12. Now, Knights fans have been giving it to me in the comments the last few weeks, and I am man enough to take my licks, but wow, that performance, albeit against an awful Saints side, was so impressive considering who they were missing and what was at stake. Newcastle's middles were strong and gave the likes of Young, Marju and Gamble the platform they needed to find plenty of holes in the Dragons' line. Although they did make their own fair share of errors, they defended really well and played like a team that wasn't resting a lot of their stars. I said just before that the Roosters are a dark horse for the premiership, but honestly, the Knights have to be right up there, given what they've been able to achieve in the last tail end of the season. And it gets even better for Knights fans too, with Ponga, Hastings and Fitzgibbon all named to return, giving the Knights a huge boost. Frizzell, Gagai and Crossland are all back after being rested last week, so the Knights will be fielding a very strong side. And as for the Milk, the Raiders couldn't secure a home final, coming unstuck late and eventually going down to the Sharks 24 points to 6. The Milk were right in that contest up until about the 60th minute mark before Seb Chris was sent off for an unintentional but extremely dangerous tackle on Zioni Katoa, and the Raiders caved under the pressure. Shining lights though have to be Jordan Rapana, who has been great at fullback for the Raiders recently, and their outside backs have all been fairly solid as well, but they really are missing some punch through the middle with Papali'i and Horsburgh out, which could really come back to bite them against a Knights side that has a fairly strong middle. In terms of teams list, Seb Chris is obviously out. He's been suspended for 5 matches for that dangerous tackle. That means that James Schiller comes in on the wing. Albert Hopewati is also listed among the reserves and could be a late call-up. Looking at the two sides head to head, the Knights have won 5 of the last 7 encounters, including 2 wins already during the regular season this year. Alright Newcastle fans, you've been grilling me for weeks, so here you go. I am taking the Knights 13+. I mean, the Raiders, to their credit, looked alright and held their own against the Sharks, but the way the Knights have been playing and the confidence they have, especially with all of their key stars back, I really do think the Knights could potentially put 30, 40, 50 points on the Raiders. It's really not out of the question, so there you go Newcastle fans, I've tipped the Knights. Bang, and just like that we're done for another week. Only 4 games this week, but there should be 4 absolute heaters. In summary, I am taking the Broncos 1-12, the Wars 1-12, up the Wars, the Roosters 1-12, and the Knights 13+. Enjoy the finals, guys. Let me know who you're tipping or supporting. It doesn't have to be a tip anymore. We're going with vibe now. The season's done. This doesn't matter. Let me know who you're vibing with in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Leave a like on the video, and I'll catch you in the next one.